excited and honored and grateful to be on the stage with some of the most resilient, dynamic, incredible, amazing people on the planet. And how many of you know that tough times don't last always? How many of you believe that? Okay. How many of you have ever had a bad day? How many of you had a bad day and you got through it? Okay. So make some noise for the resilient tribe that faces day after day and they keep pushing through. So just to give you a quick introduction, my name is Marion Jones. I am actually a resident of Chicago now. 1 year, just made my 1 year anniversary last month. I relocated here from Boston, Massachusetts, where I was diagnosed with NMO during the height of COVID, November of 2020. So I heard someone earlier, a couple of people sharing that they were also diagnosed during COVID. And fortunate for me, I received a diagnosis within 72 hours of my first ER visit, which is not the case for most. And so I was completely just fortunate and grateful to be in a space where there were neurologists there who were very familiar with NMO. And I had an amazing care team there. And so I lived through some of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I relapsed on my first drug within the first 60 days of being diagnosed. And earlier you heard someone from one of the sessions talk about the differences between MS and NMO and how drastic it can be for a patient when they relapse who has NMO. And so I am an example of how drastic things were. I relapsed within 60 days, and that sent me back to the ICU, and I became partially paralyzed. And I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to work with an occupational therapist to comb my hair. I had to learn how to gain my independence to be able to drive, and a number of different things that I talk about in a book that I'm writing right now and releasing next year. Thank you. But even more than that, and Samira talked about this earlier, how in the face of some of the most devastating things that can happen, there is a seed of purpose that can also grow out of that. And so by the grace of God and just my steadfast faith, I can just, even with this year alone, this has been one of the most incredible and amazing years of my life, particularly because my ability to amplify the work that I'm doing in this space has just been, it's tenfold. And so more to come on that, but enough about me. I wore these medals because when I was going through my rehabilitation experience and learning how to walk again, the only thing I could think about was learning how to run again, because prior to being diagnosed, I had just got into running in Massachusetts. And so my mind was just on a space of how can I run again? And so Dr. Miravalli talks about brain health, and it's very important that you just adopt a habit, a healthy habit, so that when something devastating, if it happens to you, your brain, that muscle memory, will want to get back to what you were doing prior to. And that's what happened in my case. And so within the past 2 years, I've run 4 marathons, and I'm going to do my 5th marathon in September. And so keep going. If you're out there and you're wondering, I've been recently diagnosed, and what's on the other side of this? Just keep going, because there's some things that are on the other side of this thing that you may have not ever imagined for yourself. And guess what? They're good, okay? They're great, actually. So And you're going to find out just by the conversations we're going to have with this incredible panel. So I want to just turn it over and give each of our guest panelists an opportunity to introduce yourself. You know, give us some information about your background in the diagnosis space. When were you diagnosed? Where were you diagnosed? Maybe how long did it take for the diagnosis? And anything else that you want to share to kind of provide some color to that story. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Noah, as most of you guys have already seen me up here. I was not recently, but a few years ago diagnosed with MOGAD encephalitis at Children's Hospital in Wisconsin. I work with my mother, who is the ambassador of Wisconsin, and help with that. I don't know.
And you're super cool, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, so thank you, Noah. Thanks for joining us. We're so happy to have you on the panel with us today, and we're glad that you're doing well.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Oh, did Marie say you're a tennis superstar? Yeah. Okay, and a tennis superstar. All right.
I might have to get some lessons from you. That's really cool.
I'm Tressa Epps. I have NMOSD, AQP4 positive. And I mentioned earlier that I actually have another rare disease. It's called mitochondrial myopathy. In most respects, back then I felt the same thing in 1997. What is that? But it did prepare me and shape me for the next steps in my life. And I started saying my own personal mantras called home, helping others mobilize and empower. And I would say that gift given to me for myself, the gift I gave myself was to help other people. And later on, just help me. But I actually also have another thing. I had brain surgery in 2007 for Arnold Chiari. That's a whole nother thing too. But still, I was diagnosed on my way. Actually, my first symptoms was when I was coming from Copenhagen on a 10-hour flight to Chicago, hiccuping. So bad that it was not helping at all. I went to the emergency room. I was vomiting, throwing up. I became numb from my breast down to the soles of my feet, transverse myelitis. I still am, but by the grace of God, I can walk. Yes. I can walk, Marion. Muscle memory. So my diagnosis was pretty well because it was here at Rush. Shout out to Rush. They worked very fast.
Shout out to Rush.
They worked pretty fast with me. They did. They did. And had my test for AQP4 on the 17th of December. The 17th of November. And on December 1, I was diagnosed, and by December 30th, I had my first infusion. So that's the story of me right now, and I'm just so empowered to work with each of you and be inspired by each of you. And as I said, may we continue to help each other and just care. We need more care in this world.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I am Keena Peppers. I'm also an OBGYN, so this diagnosis for me was my head turning, trying to figure out what's going on. But I truly believe that my body went through all the neurology journals prior to diagnosis because I literally read the book. So I presented with intractable hiccups, initially was sent home and given some trazodone, but by the time my hand hit the doorknob, the symptoms came back with nausea and vomiting. I returned back to the emergency room. Thank God they kept me because I then had upper and lower extremity weakness. They sent me eventually to have an MRI. My MRI showed that I had a lesion in my entire cervical spine, and an MRI 3 months prior was completely normal. I came from the MRI and went straight to the neurointensive care unit, where I then had difficulty breathing, followed by respiratory failure. I was then intubated, placed on life support. My family was told that they didn't know when and if I would be removed. And my neurologist had an inkling that I had NMO and sent my labs off to Mayo Clinic. It came back positive. They made the diagnosis. About 3 weeks later, I was extubated. In that time period, I was trying to figure out why the doctors were pulling the covers back, asking me to move my feet, asking me if I can feel things. And I said, let me open my eyes and see who these people are because they're crazy. And I realized my eyes were already open. So at that point, I was blind and I was paralyzed. Of course, I was given that 5-year life expectancy. I was told I may not walk again, I may not talk again. And when I was intubated, it saved my life. However, it paralyzed my vocal cord. So you had to put your ear to my lips to hear me speak. And I literally had no muscle tone. They tried to come to my bed in the intensive care unit, set me up, my entire body fell forward. He picked me up to put me in my chair, legs were like noodles. They had to put things alongside me to help me to sit up, but I could not hold my head up. And that was how I went over to RIC. RIC saved the world again because I literally learned how to walk. It was the most difficult thing I had ever done in my life. I was, of course, started on Rituxan and so many high-dose steroids. And I had external outpatient rehab, learned how to walk, But fast forwarding, just like Marion said, sometimes things that you feel like are the worst thing that's ever happened to you actually turn out to be the best thing that's ever happened to you. And I love to use my voice, even though it's my raspy, sexy voice, because they had to inject my vocal cord to bring it midline so that through speech therapy, I could speak. I was able to write a book, Shattered But Not Broken, A Doctor's Transformational Journey from Illness to Resilience. And I love to tell my story because you never know who's in the audience who woke up this morning and said that they were not gonna make it. So allowing your light to shine, allowing you to amplify your voice, and allowing people to believe, people to still give them hope that they can move on.
My name is Courtney Smith. I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, MG, in April of 2001, so a month before my 23rd birthday. My symptoms presented as debilitating fatigue. So they presented in 1998. So I was in college. It was the first semester of my junior year. And I'm talking fatigue where I couldn't move. I'm young. I'm not really thinking about my health, but I do know this does not feel right. So I contact my primary care physician back home because I was in college at Michigan State. I'm from Chicago. See him, and he's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just partying too much. And so I'm like, look, I know I'm partying, but not enough where I should just not be able to get out of bed and go to work. So that was junior year. Fast forward to last semester, my senior year, I noticed that if I was taking a picture, I couldn't hold my smile long enough to take the picture. But this was back when we were getting film developed. So we didn't have our, cell phones where we could take a picture and see it instant. So maybe it takes me a month to get film developed. And then that's when I'm like, oh, I'm not smiling. I graduate from college. Don't think much of it because it's not happening every day. It's not even happening every month. It's maybe once every 2 months. A year after I graduated, so I graduated that May, that January I was in a car accident where someone rear-ended me. My car was badly damaged, but I was not. But it was enough to just make my symptoms spiral. So I contacted my neurologist, and he was like, no, I contacted my primary care physician. He was like, you don't even need to see me. Go to a neurologist. But because of insurance, although this was January, I was not diagnosed until that April. It has been a blessing in disguise. I've been able to see my purpose in life different ppurposes. In 2001, I produced an award-winning film about women in autoimmune diseases. Thank you. And I was in my 20s, so that was just kind of like, ooh, I felt very good about that. Fast forward now, I am a Reiki master where I can touch people or not even be in the same room as a person and heal them. So that is, or help them to heal. I can help them heal on physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental levels. And so my health has forced me to tap into myself in a way that I know if I was not diagnosed with everything that I've gone through, I would not be where I am now. And I'm in a place of peace. So I feel very fortunate.
Hi, I'm Tara Zier. First, I want to thank Samira and the Samira Foundation for this amazing opportunity. I'm really excited and grateful to be here with all of you and hear these unbelievable stories, just amazing stories. I have stiff person syndrome. I went through a very difficult, brutal diagnostic odyssey. It took me almost 3 years to get diagnosed. And I think there's some obvious triggers here that I'll mention. In 2014, my former husband died by suicide. My kids were 11 and 13 at the time. I felt this enormous amount of stress and pressure to stay alive for them. It was overwhelming. 2 months later, I got pneumonia, and then my health just tanked, it just spiraled down. And I was experiencing these really oddball, frightening symptoms. Didn't show up neurological for some time. And I was running from doctor to doctor in crisis mode, knowing something was seriously wrong, trying to find answers. I was dismissed. I was mismanaged. I was told it was anxiety. I had a primary care doctor at an appointment kind of get in my face, and he said, I don't know why you keep going to all these doctors. You have anxiety. Take this medication and see me back in 3 months. And I'm respectful, I'm professional, and I looked at him, I said, if you felt the way that I feel, you'd be doing the same thing. So I found another primary care doctor. I finally connected with the right doctors. They're wonderful people, found a wonderful primary care doctor, and landed at Johns Hopkins for treatment. At that point in 2017, I wasn't able to work. I was a dentist. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't drive. I couldn't care for myself or my kids. I had to hire someone to live with us. And was diagnosed in the fall of 2017. It was probably around my third visit at Hopkins when my neurologist said that they had recently applied for a grant at NIH for research, and they were denied the grant because there wasn't enough research to support getting the grant. And that just blew my mind. I'm thinking if Hopkins can't get a grant, there's a big problem here. And so that was my aha moment. And shortly after that, I was raising awareness, and in the latter part of 2019, I started the Stiff Person Syndrome Research Foundation with two main drivers. One, to support research for better treatments and a cure, and two, to show my children that no matter what happens in life, you can still make a difference.
Thank you so much for just your transparency and your bravery for sharing your story with all of us. So I want to just ask this question because I know that obviously when you're diagnosed, it changes your life, literally. What would you share with someone who's newly diagnosed or maybe someone that's just living with the disease about managing just your life as a person versus the days you're doing treatment, maybe you're getting infused or you're treating at home. Kind of like walk us through that and tell us about what sort of information you would share with someone about just finding balance in that space. And anyone can jump in. We don't have to go in order, just.
I would say for newly diagnosed people, take your time and do what's comfortable for you. Don't push your body to do something that your body is not meant to do. Make sure you take it at your own pace and work your way up with your body.
I piggyback on that. That's exactly what I do daily. And I call it spoons. You start off the day with 10 spoons. And with those 10 spoons, you share with your caregiver, your family, your physical therapist, how your day is. Some days you only have 8 spoons to give, and they know about that. Some days you may have 0 spoons to give. They know about that. And it works well in physical therapy, it works well with your family, it works well mostly with yourself, that you're empowering yourself. And that was one of the main things that I would give. The other thing I would tell a new person is when I started off, I was connected through Amgen. Amgen was my life preserver. They gave me so much information, and I would suggest that when you have a patient liaison, you work with them. They help you through things. Look through social media, talk with other people. And I already said how I felt about Samara Foundation, because also that's who I've been following since the day of my diagnosis. And it helped me. I would suggest doing social media posts and learning from each other. That's what I do.
So I agree with them, and then I'm going to attack it on a different end, because I feel that, like, my mantra is the cure when there is no cure. So literally right now, today, there is no cure. However, it will be in the future. But right now, I feel that you should try to live the healthiest life that you can. And that means nutrition. I'm not going to say diet, because I don't want you to be on a diet. I want you to have the proper nutrition. I want you to get in the exercise that you can do, depending on what your disability is. If you have to do chair yoga, find something that you can do and set that expectation for something that, you don't have to say, I'm going to walk outside and I'm going to run a marathon, because that's not going to happen. But start somewhere and make it a routine so that you feel funny if you don't do it. And then the other things that really, really help, I know, like, when we're on the chats and everything, everybody talks about chronic fatigue and brain fog. So in that, I feel like, mind and body, you have to use things that we use on an everyday basis. So if you feel like you have brain fog, put it in your phone. Your phone is an extension of your brain. Put it in your phone, set an alarm. And then I also use that for being more mindful, as far as, okay, I know that I need to take my medication at this time. However, when you see somebody walking down the street, you tend to give other people accolades. You say, oh, I like your hair, your shoes are cute. We need to give ourselves accolades. We need to pat ourselves on the back. And in doing that, you can use some affirmation. You can make it say whatever you want it to say. It doesn't even have to be something that you're close to. It's something I want to do way in the future. And you can put that down, and when you say it like you mean it, because this is what I want to do. And you can make it any kind of way you want. Like I would always say, I can do all things through Christ. I am blessed everywhere I go. Some type of positivity that you can say it and believe it, and it will actually boost you and elevate you so your mood can change. You have to start seeing the glass like it's half full all the time, because no matter what we go through every single day, it could have been worse. So you have to use that positivity to blow your mind. And so many other things. Sleeping. We have to get some sleep. So people say, well, how do I get the sleep in? You know, you may be working now. Let me tell you, I'm an OBGYN, so I might not get sleep for other reasons, but but I never go to sleep late because in the morning I'm getting up at 5:30, I'm gonna do my class. But date your bedroom. That's how you have to set it up. You have to set it up like, ooh, I'm going on a date with my bedroom. I'm gonna have the softest pillow. I'm gonna have the most comfortable mattress. I am going to let that lavender flow all over the room. I'm gonna turn off the lights. You know,
Stay focused, everyone. Stay focused.
yeah, you have to set it up like you are going on a sexy date with your bed. Make it so that when you get in the bed, not with your iPhone, not with your iPad, with nothing, even if you need to play just a little bit of a song or do some type of, I don't know, brown noise, black noise, all that noise, use something that will help to relax you. You need to do some meditation, even if it's guided. Put your earbuds on. I tell people, you know what? Give yourself a timeout, like you're 5. Give yourself a timeout. Put on your earbuds. Allow the breath work to help to relax you. Because something that continuously always sets us off is stress. So we have to try to get the stressors out of our life. And sometimes, I'm not trying to be funny, sometimes those stressors are people. Sometimes you have to say, you know, I cannot listen to this because I am in my zone, I don't need this, and I am going to live this healthy life because this is my life. And you have to start almost trying to be a little selfish on what your expectations are, how you want to be treated, and how you are going to be an advocate for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Peppers. So I'm going to pivot with the question. You said advocacy, and it just sort of, you know, being an advocate for yourself. And I want to talk about something that has become a hot topic in our space around shared decision making. And, you know, fortunately, I talked about the great neuro care team that I had in Boston. When I got ready to move here, the first thing I did was reach out to Samira. I'm like, hey, I need a neurologist in Chicago. Do you know someone? She's like, hey, you remember that webinar we had the other day? The neurologist that was on there, he's phenomenal, and he's in Chicago. And so I just got really blessed because my neurologist here, when I told my neurologist in Boston, you know, she said, who's this person that you're thinking about? And as soon as I said his name in her office, she started screaming. She's like, oh, that was my mentor. So it just all worked out. My neurologist is here, Dr. Miravalli. You heard from him earlier. So I am treated, and I'm a patient at Rush, and I have a phenomenal experience. And I know, unfortunately, that's not the case for every NMO patient or every patient that's living with a rare disease. So I'd love to hear from you on just thoughts around shared decision making. How do you feel when you go into your regular appointments? What are some things that you do that are maybe best practices that you could share with others that have helped you along this journey?
One thing is I gave myself permission to fire anyone on my healthcare team that wasn't in alignment with my goals. I'm like Marion, I'm very active. So to have a healthcare professional place limitations on me, that is not in alignment with how I live my life. And I remember when I was first diagnosed, I switched neurologists. I had a thymectomy, and at the time, a thymectomy is when your thymus gland is removed. At that time, they were actually cracking people like through their chest. So my sternum was cut open, and so that was I had surgery on September 11, 2001. That following August, I was back in Michigan for grad school. And my neurologist was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're leaving the state, and I was like, yes, I want to go to grad school. He was like, but what if this happens and this happens? I'm like, but it hasn't happened yet. So there's a medical team in place in Michigan. If something happens, let me just go. And they did. But it was very important that everyone, including my family, just get on board with, this is something that I want to do. This is a goal that I have set for myself that I want to reach. And so again, giving yourself permission to fire someone who is on your healthcare team that is not in alignment with your wants and needs, and then taking the initiative to find that right fit for you.
Thank you.
Oh, I just echo that so much. So much. Sometimes it takes several docs before you find the right person, the right fit, but particularly with rare diseases. There isn't a lot known oftentimes with rare diseases. So I think having an open collaborative relationship with your physician, I think that you are really exploring different treatment options together and being comfortable with who's treating you. Sometimes it takes time to find the right people, and I would encourage everybody, go with your gut. If something doesn't feel right, don't be afraid to go find somebody else. Don't be afraid to get second opinions. And doctors should frankly be open to their patients getting second opinions. So I just want to echo, Courtney, what you said.
Yeah, I had an experience that was similar where I had to change neurologist. When I was diagnosed by a neuroimmunologist. However, then she went to Boston, so then I was being seen by a neurologist who actually specialized in MS, and everything was going fine, except I was on Enspring and my liver function test had gone up. And immediately, the discussion was switching me to another medication. And I had received something saying that there was a new neuroimmunologist in town. And I kept saying I was going to go. So I called her up and I asked for an appointment, and they initially said, hey, aren't you seen by this person? Did they give you a referral? And I was like, no, they didn't. But I'm on my chart at the same time saying I need to see, because I felt if something was drastically wrong, that there should have been a referral to a neuroimmunologist who may have the answer so that I don't have to switch to a different medication. She had me to see a hepatologist. The hepatologist looked at my labs. They said, oh, your CPK was up and your LFTs were up. Do you ever get sore? I said, well, you know, when I go to the gym, sometimes I might get a little sore, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, when was the last time you worked out? I said, I worked out the morning that I had my labs drawn. And he said, oh, I'm going to have you don't work out for 10 days. Get your labs drawn. I went back, had the labs drawn. He said, your LFTs and your CPK were elevated because you worked out that morning. You can continue using the Enspring. And I said, high five, I'm switching over. So sometimes you have to make that decision. Sometimes you have to call it and do what you need to do.
I had a situation occur over the years, and particularly is when you have a primary care doctor and they're not well versed on our disorders at all with rare diseases. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, for example, you go to your primary care doctor for your labs, and it was a vitamin D. My vitamin D level was like a 10, near zero. And it's supposed to be 35 or above. And she felt there's no need for me to put you on any vitamin D regimen. Actually, for someone who has NMOSD or rare diseases, that's a no-no. Your vitamin D level is supposed to be up. So I had to advocate, no, I would like for you to get it. And then she said, no, I had to actually send an article about NMOSD. And even a second article about people of color, because of the sun, don't always, or brown, get it absorbed in our skin. It bothered me that I had to even do that. So then you go to the neurologist and they say, no, no, no. And I'm like, well, I'm going to get it to 35. But the thing is, they're saying, we want to see it at 50. Because guess what? There's going to be fluctuations sometimes. So you feel supportive. So good coordinated care is having the doctors work together, see the charts together, pay attention. But most of the time, they just need to read before they get in. Read everything. Don't make assumptions that when they get in the room, we're going to talk about it. Because it's back to what I said earlier session. We don't have always time. So, like you said, Marion, come there with your question. Talk about what you need. Ask them politely now, have you had an opportunity to read my chart? Just be nice about it. That's all you got to do. So therefore, coordinative care and working with each other, we can make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Great information. Thank you all for sharing all of the wisdom and knowledge that you have through your own lived experience. I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions from the audience. Yes.
First of all, this panel is always my favorite, very inspirational. Thank you all so much. Your courage, your vulnerability, it really, really moved me. Yeah, seriously. My question is for Noah. Noah, in our community, we see more women than men have, of course, NMO. MOGAD is about 50-50, but in my experience, I think maybe males are maybe a little shyer to come to these things or to speak about, you know, their lived experiences. So as both a male living with the condition, but also a growing male, you're a teenager, what have sort of been your biggest challenges?
Honestly, some of my biggest challenges are really like once I first got diagnosed and I was in the hospital, that really set me back from letting me do what I wanted to. But as I progressed and got better, I had people to support me, friends, my parents, everybody helping support me to do the things I wanted to. And I honestly just overcame it over time with support from people and the foundation like you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I have a quick question. We talked a lot and earlier today about mental health and mental health management. I'd love for each of you, but Tara, I was thinking about you specifically, is that you said that your doctors were like, oh no, you just have anxiety. Dismissive, but getting a diagnosis would be anxiety inducing. So I want to know how you all work today to manage and fortify your mental health.
It's a great question. So it's interesting. There was a lot of anxiety not getting answers, but it's like, goes back to trusting your gut that something's seriously wrong on the medical side. So as far as mental health support, I can't speak to that enough as how critical that is with anybody with a chronic condition. And for me personally, going through, pretty significant traumatic event, looking at, appreciating that I have to really lean in and address that so that I can get better. There were really, really difficult times for myself and my children going through that, and just the level of fear that came from that. I looked at different therapies. I've tried many. I landed with something called EFT. It's like tapping. And that's something that's been helpful for me. And, I kind of look at like, okay, well, here's how I got here. How do I unwind this? How do I get better? And that's certainly looking at like the physical, the emotional. So the mental health is key. And I think probably different things may work for different people. And that seems to have really, really helped me. And connecting with the right provider is really key, because I had to find my person.
So I have a question, and I'm seeing a very interesting dynamic I've just noticed just by being here from the other panels that have been here, especially with the patients. I am looking at a dentist, a doctor, everyone up there except obviously the young man is too young to have an actually advanced degree. and most of the people who were on the panel also had advanced degrees as well. And I'm looking at, when it comes to diagnosis, women who were people who could fight for things, and partly because your education allowed you to do so. And I'm wondering, just wondering, are there a ton of people out there who are not being diagnosed at all or misdiagnosed because of economic reasons? Because I'm consistently seeing, I'm looking at this stage and I'm like, that does not match what society looks like, not even in the most remote way. And I look around the room, I've talked to people, and I'm like, that number on the well-educated side is very high of people who can advocate for themselves because their education allows them to do so. I am become extraordinarily concerned about those who may not have access at all.
And Emmanuel, that's one of the other things too, and I know we've had this discussion, is that sometimes people look at you and they say right away, there is nothing wrong with you. They make decisions. And that's another reason, this is just sad, that when I go to a doctor appointment, I dress up. Don't I, doctor? Don't I dress up? Because people make a decision as soon as you walk in the door. And guess what, frankly, we all do, really. We do, if we're honest. And I'm saying that to say that it sometimes gets in the way of getting the proper diagnosis, because people can make a decision where I'm going to put you here. I'm going to do more tests. Or you're in pain, so maybe you're a drug addict. When you're not, you're just in pain. Everyone has different thresholds of pain. Or I'm going to work more for you. Or your insurance will do more for you. That's what it is. Those are reasons why there's lack of access and opportunity. And I'm hoping that we can make a difference and stress very hard that we care about care. Let me just do.
And also, just to add to that before I turn it over to Dr. Keena, is this is really why health equity is really important. And, sometimes people say, heavy is the crown. Have you ever heard that saying? Those of us, that have the crown, heavy is the crown. It just means that there's a responsibility that comes with being educated. There's a responsibility even for those of us who have been diagnosed and that have a voice to sort of step in that role to be a voice for the voiceless. And so it's never missed on me that when I go into a hospital and I am getting infused, even though I'm there and I'm a rare disease patient and I could just be there kind of, wallowing in my own, space, but I'm listening to the pod next to me to make sure that the person next to me is getting their questions answered, that they need some help. In fact, I'm going to put her on the spot, and I know she sort of doesn't mind. She's a little shy, but I was in the hospital one day, and I was getting infused, enjoying my, popcorn and snacks, because Rush, they have really good snacks, and that infusion bill is expensive, so I try to get all the good snacks while I'm there. And there was a young lady next to me, and I just heard her bawling. I mean, she was crying, and I could not just sit and not, reach out to see what was troubling and what was going on. And long story short, she was having these spasms, and in the MS world, they call those the MS hug, and it's sort of, we experience that with NMO as well, and it's like this tightening grip. And it's painful. And I remember the days when I was having these spasms when I was in Boston and couldn't get out of bed. And my neurologist there prescribed a medication. And then, what do you know? Just like that, I was done. No more spasms. And I had a conversation with her. I said, I went over, introduced myself. And she said, I said, do you mind if I ask, And she said, yeah, I have this rare disease NMO. And I got so excited. I was like, I have NMO, And instantly I said, can we exchange contact information? And, I want to talk to you. I think I have, a remedy for the spasms. And so we talked, we connected. I shared with her that drug. I said, you should talk to your neurologist about it. She went to talk to her neurologist. And then she texted me like days later saying, you are an angel because I am spasm free. I have not had another spasm. And I was like, yes, girl, this is what it's all about. And so we are now all in a group chat together. We check on each other regularly, and, one thing I can say is that's what it's about. I don't see myself as just having this mic and being in the condition that I'm in because it's for me. It's not about me. It's about being able to do exactly what I did in that hospital for Ariel and for every other person that God allows my path to cross. And so I'm just grateful for being in that space, and so you never know how the dots connect in life. And so I see another Instagram friend who raised his hand. So I'm going to see if we can get the mic to him and then we'll wrap up.
I just wanted to know what was the name of that drug to start with the spasm.
Let's talk after. I got you, okay? All right, so thank you so much again to our panelists. I think we have to wrap because of time. So I've gotten, the Queen has spoken. So any of you that have questions for any of us, feel free to connect with us in passing. I just want to share my email really quickly. It is marion@samirafoundation.org. That's Marion. You can pull out your phones. It's okay. At samirafoundation.org. If you're newly diagnosed, if you know someone, if you're having symptoms that you're thinking, oh my gosh, could this be? Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you, to be a resource, or to point you in the direction of people I know. And come join us on the Brain Health Series calls. They are free and they are helpful. Yes. Okay? All right.
We need to give these folks a standing ovation. Thank you. Guys,